back to the Positive Games Podcast. Today, my special guest is Sam Salz, who you may have seen rising on TikTok. Also, college football player, Texas A&M. You're an Aggies fan, and I believe you are the I don't know if the only, but Orthodox Jewish football player, right?
Yeah, in Division 1 football right now. Yeah.
Division 1 football. So yeah, shout out to you for that, and I want to thank you for coming on today, and be a great chat. But how are you today?
Thank God. Thank God. Good. Yeah, sky's blue. It's warm outside finally, so it's a good day.
Awesome, man. So yeah, I saw a lot of your stuff on TikTok a while back, and it's pretty intriguing, man. That you would or anybody would not have any high school experience playing football or really any sport, and I guess you put it in your head that you wanted to be a part of the football team, and you found a way to make it happen.
Yeah.
How about early life? You're from Pennsylvania originally?
Yeah. So I grew up in Philadelphia.
Okay.
So I grew up in the city. I would definitely say it was an interesting childhood for sure. I grew up living with my mom and my grandparents.
Okay.
So that was it was very, very, very interesting, especially because of my mom. So she became more observant um, right around the time I was born. So my grandparents weren't as observant of Judaism. Doing the traditional stuff, but obviously not, all the 613, all the laws that we have. So it's definitely very interesting, like growing up in a kind of like a mixed household in that sense. But yeah, so I grew up with my mom, and my grandparents as a kid. I went to Jewish schools my entire life. And I definitely would say I was also a product of my community. I think my community like played a large part in raising me. Um, so yeah, and obviously my relationship with my dad, obviously, as I got older, um, you know, I like it got better and better as I got older, obviously. So my dad and I are really close now. Um, but yeah, but I did spend the bulk of my life. Well, I spent my entire time before college, living with my mom, my grandparents, and then seeing my dad occasionally on the weekends.
And what made you want to go to A&M? Growing up in Philly.
It's actually really funny. So I didn't know A&M even had existed until my friends were watching like Dude Perfect videos when we were in school, and I became a big Dude Perfect fan. So I was watching a lot of Dude Perfect videos, and like in their old stuff, they were wearing A&M gear, and I was like, oh, these guys went to A&M. What's A&M? So I started looking up A&M, and then I started looking up, more about it, and I kind of just fell in love with the school, the traditions, the values, just everything that makes it the place that it is. And once I had fallen in love with that, I came to look, okay, well, like what's the Jewish community here like? How's it going to be for me as a place spiritually? And I fell in love with that as well. I think it's a very unique community here. I think A&M, for me, it just spiritually has been like a good place. And so, with that combination of factors, the tradition, the amazing network, the just the culture down here, everything in the Jewish community, like all that stuff, tying it together, what made me really want to go to A&M.
And so then you get to campus. You pick out, obviously before that you pick your major. What did you major in by chance?
So I major in economics. I'm majoring in economics.
And so you're taking classes, and then what happens? You're watching football, watching the team, and you just kind of get a thought in your head or something.
So kind of. I actually wasn't a full-time student at A&M at the time. I hadn't fully gotten into A&M. I got into their program for system admission, so I had to go to like a system school first. But I did it online, so I lived in College Station. I was actually at West Texas A&M online for my first year while I was living in College Station in like one of the rabbi's houses. And when I went to my first game, it was against Kent State. It was a Saturday night game, and something kind of like clicked in my head because I had considered doing it in the past, and when I was younger, something had told me that for some reason or another, I had to play college football. It was really weird because again, football was not big in my household growing up. My family is immigrants, so like from the Soviet Union. And like, so, football was not a huge part of my life, mostly. Aside from, obviously from when the Eagles, were doing good, because that's just how life is in Philadelphia.
Right.
But it wasn't a big thing in my life. But something when I was young told me that I had to play college football, whatever it was. And obviously now when I go speak, I talk about that. I attribute that initial thought to, that being like kind of like almost like a message from like a message from God. Like as everything that we have is I see as from God. And therefore your thoughts are also from God. And you have to understand why you have them and you have to utilize them. And so they kind of had taken the back burner when I went to high school, because we didn't have a football team in high school. I went to an Orthodox Jewish high school, 100 kids. It's like it's
Wow.
between everything that needs to happen, it was just not going to happen. And because that was the case, everything just kind of sat in the back burner. And when I went to my first game, my friend had procured somehow these front row tickets. And because he got these front row tickets, I was there and I saw everything way closer than the typical person would. And football for the first time wasn't on a screen; it was like a reality in a sense. And because it was like that, I took what I believed the distance was between me and them, and it shortened it. And I said, you know what, I believe I could do this, and that's what kick-started me training, essentially.
And so the rule, right, is that I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you got to be a full-time student to be a part of the team. And then I think I was reading that you had to have had some high school experience was another requirement. So
Yeah.
Reading those things, I mean, how were you able to continue forward and, you know what I mean? Like not let that deter you.
Yeah. So the initial requirement that I had read was from a tryout in 2019. So in my mind, I was like, okay, maybe they'll change it. Maybe it changed. But on the other side, I was like, listen, well, I understand why they have the requirement, because it's like you don't want a guy losing his fantasy football league and then just showing up to try out and pretty much just wasting your time. But in understanding that, I was not a full-time student at the time, so I wasn't even going to be able to try out that spring. So instead, I had decided, I said, you know what, let me go watch a tryout. And at the very least, I'll go to tryout. I'll make some connections. Like they'll see my face. They'll kind of like know who I am. And so I showed up and I started calling people because I was trying to figure out, if I could come watch a tryout, if they would let me X, Y, and Z. And nobody let me in. It was like, oh, we typically don't allow people to come watch the tryouts, but here, email this guy who's not going to email you back, by the way. Email this guy, won't email you back. And then you're stuck at round one and phase 0. And I was like, I'm not doing this. All this. Like this is I emailed the guy. Never email me back. Like congratulations. Like I could have predicted that on my own. I said, so you know what? I found out that the head coach had a radio show. Just randomly. I was literally just sitting watching his radio show, and I found out, oh, you can go to it because it's filmed live with a live audience at this country and barbecue store in College Station, ironically called Rudy's. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to show up and ask over there, and I'm going to introduce myself to the head coach. And that's what I did. So I showed up to the radio show, and, in between the segments, when Jibba was a coach, you could go up and you could have him sign things. So I showed up and I said, I shook his hand. I looked him in the eyes and said, my name is Sam Salz. I'm going to walk onto the team. And, it was all 5, 6 of me saying that to him. But, it was that confidence and absolute belief, I think, that, ultimately was the primary predictor of my success. Obviously aside from the faith in God. But I shook his hand and I said that, and then I asked him to sign my yarmulke because, it's not a commonality in College Station. So I said, that's one way to get somebody to remember you. The other thing was I made sure to wear blue because everybody else would have been wearing maroon or white or some variation of like A&M colors. And I said, I'm going to make myself stand out. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to wear blue. And the other thing that I did was I asked at the radio show, what do you look for in a walk-on? I wrote in the question. I gave it to the producer. So after all that, I actually forgot, and I was leaving the place, and some drunk guy came up to me and asked if I could buy him dinner, and I said sure. So I went back in, bought this guy dinner, and everybody had cleared out. And once they had cleared out, the only people left were the head coach and some of his staff assistants, etc. So I went back up to them. I reintroduced myself, and I said, "Hey, can I come watch a tryout?" And he said, "Of course you can come watch a tryout." And so he set me up with I guess his I don't know, it was the director of player personnel, I think at the time.
Right.
His card somewhere still. And he told me to email him and they'll get me set up to come watch a tryout. I was like, all right, great, I got to foot the building. And so I started training, and closer to the tryout, I emailed him. And of course, unbeknownst to me, he actually had gone and taken another job, which is just how this business works.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of a back at square one, except, you know, their cardinal mistake in doing that was announcing where the tryout was. So I showed up to the tryout anyway with the signed yarmulke with the head coach's signature on it. And when they asked if I was there to try out, I said, no, I'm here to watch. And they're like, well, we don't typically. I said, yeah, but the head coach said I could be here. And I whipped out the yarmulke. I put it on the table. And I was like, with his signature on it. So, you know, I find that, you know, when I'm telling the truth about my life, or I'm telling like stories that have actually happened, most people will not believe them just because of, you know, how crazy they are. Thank God. But, you know, they're always true. Like, I don't lie. So but you know, a lot of times people think people do lie, and that people typically do. So they would have thought that, but I took out the head coach's signature, and they're like, okay, just go stand on the side. And as I'm standing on the side, I took a notebook and I was writing down like every drill, every stretch, everything that they did, so that I could go and figure out how to do it. And as I'm walking out of this tryout, I noticed a field on the other side of the fence, the practice field. And I said, you know, I'm just going to start training here because I'm going to be, you know, you can visualize your goal. The stadium's there. You know, there's people around. It's just the energy's better. And the grass was nicer. It wasn't killing my shins like the other place was. And on top of that, I said, you know, maybe people will see me. And at the very least, if I train out here and I show up to the tryout in the fall, and they'll be like, well, you didn't play in high school. At the very least, I'll be like, well, listen, I've been training out here for 9 months. You know, can I just at least try out? But, you know, it ended up being so much more than that. They actually didn't even end up giving me a tryout. They messaged me one day in the middle of the fall of the following season, and they just, you know, said if I asked if I'd come down to the facility, and was just on the team.
So that's a mouthful, man. But you know what? You had all your, I guess, your cards in order. I mean, you were prepared as far as, you know, the yarmulke and standing out with the different colors, getting it signed, coming back, and like you were saying, how the coaches leave and the email system. Like a lot of times, the email, yeah, it's just a generalized email. You won't get a response back. But so you were training. Was there ever any doubt? I mean, did you ever think like, you know what? I think I'm going to quit. These guys, maybe I feel like I'm getting the runaround. Maybe this isn't for me. I don't know if you talked with, you know, your family back home. Like, what were their thoughts on everything?
So everyone supported me once I explained to them my why. And, you know, my why was obviously, you know, I want to encourage people out and come to goals, because I was like, listen, if I have a 5'6" kid who's never played football before can make it on Division I SEC team, you know, everyone will be able to look at the lives and be like, okay, well, what am I missing? Like, what can I do? You know, where is my potential leading me? So that was one part of it. But the other part of it was also, you know, especially like, you know, when it comes down to the Jewish world and faith and stuff like that, that was something that I wanted to spread, you know, to everyone. You know, spread that faith. But of course, like, also spread, you know, the observance, and show that like you can be observant of the Torah, you can be observant of the laws of Judaism, and you can still be successful, and those things don't have to contradict. You know, my family came from the Soviet Union, so like a lot of older family members who are indoctrinated in the school system, you know, always kind of saw religion and success as a contradiction to each other. And for me, you know, it was important to prove that that was far from the truth, and that really what it was is my faith in God was going to be the thing that leads me to success.
Wow. Yeah,
And so once I explained that to them, like so once I explained it to my mom and my dad, they were like, well, I can't argue with those reasons. You know, it's not like you're doing it, you know, just to get, isn't it to get girls or whatever it is, you know, it's so so they couldn't argue with that, but they were very supportive of my journey. But the other thing is that I only told people that I knew would like support me and believe in me. I didn't want any of the negative energy seeping in on me as I was trying to accomplish my goal. And so therefore I had like this wholehearted belief that I was going to succeed and that God was going to help me succeed. And, God always like sent me little hints like that it was trending that direction, whether I was training outside and some coaches came out and gave me some encouragement, or some players gave me some encouragement, or some sign somewhere came along. I just took it all as a sign to keep on going and keep on working, because eventually that the goal would pan out. But it's not like, I just had like, I kind of had like this tunnel vision, and I said, like, I'm in the tunnel, the light comes when the light comes, but like, there are flashes of light every so often.
So 9 months, right? You were saying, and then again, I want to make sure I get it all right. After that is when you got on the team. And my second thing is, when you were watching these drills, are you looking on YouTube and different things? I mean, because
Yeah.
were you working out with anybody? Because I'm sure that's a lot to try to learn, even by watching, right?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I was looking on YouTube and TikTok for literally everything, because it wasn't just the, football skills. It was like, how do I train like an athlete? Because I've been in the gym, I've been, doing the bench press, the squats, like all the typical stuff. But it was like, how do I, do the, do power, like, what do I do to get faster? Because, before I was in college, it was the COVID season. So like the sports that I did have in high school, I didn't get a chance to play. So I didn't get to play soccer or tennis, or the typical sports that I do. I think I know. I'm sorry. I had a tennis season, but we didn't have a soccer season, so I didn't have as much, sprinting and running as I got to, on the typical, and I had to like get back into it completely. So I was looking up drills for speed. I was looking up drills for football, everything. But then there came this time when, there was a part of the story, because it took place over the summer. I was actually home back in Philadelphia. And for my entire story, I take the wisdom from the Jewish text, like the Talmud and the Torah, into my life completely. And there's a concept in the Talmud called "great is the power of presumption." And so, whenever I would walk around the streets of Philly, when I would go to like the gym, walk to the gym, walk home from the gym, whatever it is, I made sure that I would walk around with a football cup. And people on the street would ask me what I was doing. And I told them that I was going to, walk on to Texas A&M's team. But the other thing that did was, I had a janitor in my building. His name was Derek, and he was the guy in charge of like cleaning the whole building. And so I was carrying the football, and Derek asked me, where I played, and I was explaining to him, what I was doing. He's like, "Oh, my friend Chris trains running backs." And at the time, I was, I'm a wide receiver now, but at the time I was working towards being a running back, because as far as I had known, the position that short people play is typically running back.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So he sent me over to Chris, and then, I would go out to West Philly to train with Chris. And, he gave me drills for running back stuff. And that's like, so between that and TikTok and whatever I could find, any resource, I would DM people, I would ask people questions. I would literally would get counsel from like every single person that I possibly could, from Division I player to former walk-ons to scholarship coaches, whoever I could ask that would give me the time of the day, I would get some sort of information from, and that's how I trained.
And then it was 9 months total from training until they put you on the team, or what was the duration period?
So it was about a year minus 2 weeks. And because from when I started initially training, it was so when I started initially training, I was on a different field. It was 9 months from when I had started training across from, on the other side of the fence of Texas A&M's practice field. It was 9 months from then when I had made the team.
Mind blown, man. Just when you think you've heard it all. I mean, that's why I do the podcast for stories like this. It's pretty remarkable, and your story is gonna be life changing. Obviously, for yourself, but for a lot of people. Because again, like you said, you were going on watching TikTok, going on Instagram. You're looking at so many different avenues of asking people, and that takes a lot of courage and guts. Because again, a lot of people have ideas, right? But if it doesn't come if we don't start to put it in motion, then it always stays an idea. So for you to keep jumping through hoops and hurdles, man, my hat's off to you. Um, how are you able to balance, football and your faith? I've been reading a little bit, so I'm not an expert, but I saw there's a lot that goes on, between the both of them. So how were you able to juggle both of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when it comes to questions like these, people, this is like one of the things I get asked like all the time. And it really goes really more into how do you frame it? Do you frame things as contradictions, or do you frame them as a synthesis and like a symbiotic relationship? So some people can frame it as a contradiction. And it's kind of tough. In my experience, at least, it's kind of tough to live that way. If you frame things as a symbiotic relationship or a synthesis, then it really helps. So, for instance, with football, football training, going on this journey, greatly increased my faith in God. And it's inherently the nature of football. Despite how whatever people talk or do in the locker room, like it is an inherently faith-based sport. There's not one. I don't think I've ever met an atheist that plays football personally. Like it's just it's maybe it probably exists somewhere out there. I haven't seen it.
Right.
When someone commits to like a school or gets an offer, it's always a hashtag is all grace to God.
Mhm.
And so I think football and faith, is a synthesis because when you work hard, you can increase in your faith and vice versa. And your faith causes you to work hard. And so, with me, it becomes a little more complex with the laws of Judaism because, obviously our Sabbath is sundown on Friday night to sundown on Saturday night. And so when it comes to playing football at the high level, you're like, how do those things happen? And it's like, I don't believe there's a contradiction. I know God, like, ultimately the schedule is set by God. And I'm thankful for, the games, like the year that I get to go to. But obviously, at the end of the day, you know, my my belief in God is who I am. And football is the vehicle, to spread my message. Football is, the gift that God gave me in order to propagate my purpose on this earth.
Right.
And so therefore, I don't really ever see the contradiction. Some people, see hurdles, whatever, you can't play in certain, in day games on Saturday, you see it as like a hurdle. For me, I see it like it's all as a positive. Um, and it's just it's a completely different like mindset or way of framing things. But like even like in the beginning, when people like ask me like why would they even take you? I said, I have faith in God, and like, this is with God's help, anything is possible. And that's my number one thing is that, many things we see in life have the hill that you have to climb in order to accomplish it.
Mhm.
But if you have the right tools to climb the hill, or if you climb the mountain, then you'll be able to climb the mountain. And what does that mean? It means like listen, we have tools from God. We have everything that we have is from our creator for our own, for our benefit, for the mutual benefit of for us and him. And so, it's up to us to utilize those. But when you synthesize your purpose and the talents that you are blessed with, and then your purpose, that's when you can get something really special.
God's got a purpose for everyone. Amen. Um, how about the journey, man? I mean, I know we've been talking about it a lot, but you talked about doing speaking engagements and I guess motivational speaking. And like, if you ever take yourself back, you just step back out of everything, present day or whatever. Do you ever look back and think, with God, I was able to accomplish so much? And I guess your favorite part of it because no matter what happens, man, people will never forget this story. Not on this podcast, but your story.
That's a good question. So I look back all the time, especially now, because I'm entering the transfer portal, and God willing, I'm also graduating from A&M because I've been here. I'm a senior now, so it's been a while. So there's a lot of looking back and just looking back on the journey and like who I was, how much I've grown as a person, who I was as a freshman, all of those things, where the football program that I came into versus the football program that I left, just like all the people and all the faces and just, all the memories I had. So there's all that, my amazing teammates, most of which are already, out of football or in the NFL or preparing to go there. It's I've and coaches I've got the pleasure of meeting so many amazing people throughout this whole journey. And in fact, even through my journey before I made it on the team, I have like a notebook of names that I met, of just random people I would meet on the street who I talk to about it. But my favorite part of the journey, I would definitely say when I go. So I do speaking engagements a lot. I speak almost every week. So in fact, tomorrow I'm going to Toronto and then I'm going to Atlantic City this weekend. Speaking engagements, I love. I do every age group. So from like older adults to younger adults to middle age to high school kids, middle school kids, elementary school. I've spoken every age group. And I think the most satisfying thing that I have is like when I'll go to these events, especially with the teenagers, I would say.
Right.
And I'll have them come up to me and be like, "Oh, your story is so inspiring," or like, "You helped me believe in God," or just the numerous, either questions I'll get or just, I've had people come up to me with like tears in their eyes, and um, getting to do that and be there for the people. That's my favorite thing. That's my favorite part, and that's always what I envisioned when I had set out my goal. Because it's like a goal when you align your goals with what God wants from you. That's when you become the most successful and the most satisfied in that success. And so, when I was training, I was doing all these, I was doing all this with that vision in mind. And then, I would go speak and I would have these interactions with people, and it just was like, yeah, this is why I did it. And there would be many times where I'm speaking, like even like last week, I spoke to I did a convention with like a bunch of teams. And sometimes I'll just be alone. I'll be like thinking about it, just like thanking God for that experience because, I had a chance to change these lives and, introduce some semblance of faith or God, or, help them have faith in themselves and their goals. And, you have a chance to change someone's life. You really never know whose life you can change with what you do and how much of a universe that really is, because each person that, that you get to interact with, or that each person is their own universe, but each person also creates another universe because, God willing, they propagate, they have kids, but they also go out and talk to other people. And if you create, if you can help somebody else be a leader in the space, then, the domino effect is huge.
Yeah, and sometimes we never know the impact we have until because it's always talked about. And then when people actually come up to you and they're interacting, like you said, with tears, or they're telling you their story, I'm sure it really hits home of the why and what God's blessed you with. I know this is down the road, but I'm just thinking, man, is there like maybe there's a book deal in your future?
Working on it.
Or maybe TV or movie. Again, it's pretty inspiring. So I'm sure that if you do a book, it'll help a lot of people out as well.
Yeah, God willing, I'm working on writing a few right now. My mind is like always everywhere just because of I'm working on a lot. I work on a lot of projects. That's just like that's my thing. I love working on a million things at once, but like got to outsource everything. So like right now we're working on putting together a high school for Jewish kids to learn about their faith and then develop the sport. That's like something that isn't really existing in the Jewish community right now. And trying to help people with that. So I'm working on spearheading that, and then all the other stuff that I'm doing on social media. And then obviously I have like the books are in the works. I have a few actually, because there are some interesting perspectives on like my story that came about. So always working on it. Hopefully I'll probably work with someone who's like a writer, because thank God speaking is my strong suit, and writing takes a lot of time, but if you have the right person to help you with writing, I think like it would definitely be something that would be interesting for people, and I would love to do it.
Sure to be a smooth transition. And one of my last things is like advice, man. I know if I take a kid like from our area who's a small towner, and they might watch it and hear it and be like, yeah, that's cool. He did a lot of great things. But what am I going to do? How do maybe I don't want to do football. Maybe I want to try to do something else. So, music or whatever, because I feel like a lot of times people hear and watch, but they still don't believe and apply. But regardless, if you're reaching out to somebody right now, and they wanted to know, like, what would your advice be? Like, I want to try to tackle something that is seems greater than me right now, but I've seen your story, I've read it. What would you advise me to do?
The first step is belief, and I know everyone's going to say that, but the first step for anybody to do something is a belief. The second step is action, and then the third step is the rest of the process. So you should believe that you can do something. You should go out and do it. And as you're doing it, figure out how you're going to do it. Because if you spend all of your time allowing the thought to germinate, or trying to figure out what your plan of action, just what it is to start, just go and start. And everything else will come along. Because, if you're going to go out to the field and do your footwork and then figure out all the other drills, do that. If you're going to go out, if you're going to go out and just start writing. If you want to get into music, start writing the lyrics. You know what I mean? Or start producing, or whatever it is that you want to do. Just go out and do it. You got to have the belief in yourself that you're going to do it. But more than that, you always have to have your why. And the why is the most important thing that you'll have. And so I would encourage people to go out and find their why. But I would say find a why that's more everlasting than the typical, I want money, I want girls, or I want attention, I want whatever it is. All that stuff, the good stuff, the good aspects of it will come if you align with your purpose. And if you align, and I would say that align your purpose with God and elicit that help from God, and follow your purpose in life. That's the best way to reach success. Because when you align your goals with God, when you make His will your will is His will, and therefore you will be successful, and you will elicit His help in everything that you do. And in doing that, you will live a fulfilled life as the person that you are meant to be. But don't look at other people and where they are. Look at where you are. The other thing is you need to have positive people around you. Have a good counsel. Have good, people, but people who, not people who are sitting around, smoking and drinking and doing all these things. Don't, have people who you can trust, who have, either experience, or they don't. Maybe they're just your friends, but they're positive and they support you. Have people around you, that do that. And then the other thing is just be headstrong and go through with it. Fight for your goals. And if there is a wall, there's always a way around it. You just have to be willing to figure out how and what that is. And so you just have to be willing to take that as a test, and understand that when you ask God for things, you will be tested, to see if you are the worthy recipient of that blessing. You will be tested, and you have to, hopefully you can pass the test, or if you don't, understand why you didn't and learn, and then pass the next time it comes around. Right. And it's also an action. That's the other thing is you have to do, is because like you can ask God for everything you want. My mother, as my mother always said, God will do 90%, but you have to put in 10% of the work. Like you have to make yourself the vessel for the blessing. You have to make yourself the reason for God to invest in you. And so, when I was going out into the field and I was training on the field, an hour and a half to 2 hours a day, but then I would go to the gym for 2.5 to 3 hours a day. Then I would eat rice and beans for 2 hours because there wasn't kosher meat readily available in College Station, so I could gain weight. And so and during that time, I would watch videos about coverages about football to at least somewhat learn something. So I was investing 7 hours of my day into the goal, and therefore make up worthwhile investment for that blessing.
It's great advice, man. It's great sound advice right there. You hit it on everything. I mean, align with God. You've got to believe. You've got to, you got to do your part. And, yeah, you do have to put yourself around positive-minded people. It's so easy to get distracted. Every day there's distractions. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that. That was great advice. Social media. Where can people find you?
Yeah. So social media, on Instagram is my biggest platform, thank God. Sam __ Salz, that's SALZ. I'm on YouTube at Sam Salz 39 or Sam Salz. You can look me up. The content there's a little bit different. I do like my vlogs, what goes on in the week, what goes on in my life between it, whether it's traveling, just whatever it is. I try to make it a little more laid back and comedic, but I love doing that part. And then I'm on TikTok and X, and I'm on pretty much every LinkedIn, Facebook. Like I'm on everything. Just if you look up Sam Salz, should be able to find me.
Sam, thank you for coming on again, taking time out of your day. You're a busy man, like you said. You probably got to get on the plane here in a little bit and take off. But it's been great having you on. I appreciate the knowledge and your story. Again, remarkable, man. I mean, sometimes I feel like I've not heard it all, but heard a lot of similar things, and not today. I always say I learn from everybody that comes on, and I've learned a lot from you today. So I think even in life, somebody who's not trying to pursue football or anything, somebody can take something away from this interview, from what you said about, again, staying positive and keeping God first and doing whatever it is that you're trying to do that, is going to be good. So, yeah, appreciate you, man. Blessings to you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Best of luck.
You as well.